Kia ora everybody, you're tuning in to Dr. Burst from Tamaki Makaurau in Aotearoa. For those tuning in for the first time, this video is part of a public activation called the Avondale Pavilion project. Each month we get a different writer and or artist on board to repaint the pavilion structure in the heart of Avondale. We are surrounded by a local legal wall, and the idea is to update the pavilion every couple of weeks, capture the artist's real-time painting, and also pair that video with a conversation with the artist. So in this month's video, we sit down with OG writer Swim, aka Tins, aka Mike Pipes, from the infamous DMN crew. I recall seeing your work and also the work of your crew throughout Auckland when I first started graffiti, so it's really awesome to be able to sit down with you and get to know a little bit about you. So to crack straight into it, could you let us know who you are and where you come from?
Yep, my name is Mike, known as Mike Pipes. I've written graffiti names like Swim, Tins, Dreamer. People have known me as those things. But I'm just basically an artist and musician from Auckland, New Zealand.
And when did you first get involved with graffiti?
I first got into graffiti in 1999. I would say before that I'd scribbled on school desks, sort of thing, school desk scribbler. But in 1999 is when I first did tagging it, first wrote outside.
What was the catalyst that got you involved?
At that time, tagging was popularized enough that most kids were exposed to it through what I call like the school desk tagging. And you saw other kids doing it and started having a go at it. I don't remember anyone specifically, just that kids, tagged on paper and had these silly little names, and I did too.
And could you describe to us the experience you had in your first mission?
My first missions were linked to going skateboarding late at night, doing tags, straights tags. My first straights tag was Scar. I'd tag Scar. My first sort of missions were in sort of the Morningside, St. Luke's area. I'd go out and skateboard by myself or with my friend Barry Bonza, and we'd do we started doing our little straights tags, little Scar tags along the way.
So going from tagging to painting pieces, how did you get involved with your crew DMN?
Boss Barry Bonza went to senior college with Kai's, and Kai's had gone from like someone who did tagging to being a tagger or writer. He'd sort of made that step. He had the identity, and he repped DMN. He was in DMN, and we formed a little group, and I started writing DMN as well. I started heading up DMN, and through Kai's we met Mice, and it was sort of the four of us, Mice, Kai's, Barry Bonza, and me, sort of were the new sort of DMN at that time. But it was informal. I wasn't invited to join the crew. I didn't understand what the norms and values and rules around that sort of thing was, or really what it was. I just understood that Kai's knew what he's DMN, so we did DMN.
The DMN that I know when I first started was yourself, Boss, Kai's, Mice, and Drastic. So I remember you mentioned that throughout the day, there were also some earlier kind of founding members of DMN. Who were those people?
Yeah, so DMN was a crew that existed. DMN was formed in 1995 by a group of skaters, and their some of their leading members were guys like Coupe, Guest, and Kai's and Mice were members of that crew. They weren't the core membership of that crew. They were legitimately in that crew, and that crew was well known and established, but they weren't pursuing graffiti. But even by the time I started getting into tagging, and Kai's and Mice were really the only ones who were actually actively pursuing the crew on the streets at that time. And when you mentioned Drastic was the same thing. He was a friend of mine. Kai's and Mice, I remember telling him Drastic still reminds me about this story. The time he walked home crying because we told him he can't be in DMN. You can't do that, bro. And yeah, he just followed on with the DMN sort of what's the tradition now of just help you just end you bum rush. It gets bum rushed. The guys put themselves down. They start writing it when they want to. When we did that, we didn't really understand that at the time that was compromising with that crew. It was tacitly accepted. There was no ramification or attempt to stop that from happening. But we weren't viewed as legitimately the DMN crew for at least the first couple of years, at least. Wouldn't have been until I think 2004 and 2005 that our work and ownership of the identity usurped the original groups. And it wouldn't have been until even later that the original group acknowledged this, that they called it the same crew. To me, it was I categorise our different eras. There was the real DMN, then the fake DMN.
What did it mean to be a part of that crew, and how did that contribute to developing you as a writer?
A lot, because ours was a lifestyle brand. The name was Dirty McNasty. It says it all. It wasn't third realm artists or Ready to Roll, the most dedicated, names that fit specifically graffiti crews. This is it's like a gang name. It's the Dirty McNasties, the Dirty Macs, and it was about everything. It was about being a dirty. It means a submersive graffiti experience. Whether I was painting or not painting, it was all the same. It's the same. It's one hat the whole time. It's all interconnected. It's all racking, painting, rapping, all the elements of hip hop. Certain sports like skateboarding, rejection of norms and values of society, not working, not giving a fuck, stealing, finding rich chicks' parents' houses to rinse, rolling in on parties uninvited and stealing their CDs, just being all those things. It's always living the same life all the time, constantly, whether it's the same. Yeah, those places were all interlinked. They didn't separate.
One of my immediate memories of DMN is you guys having the ability to rock some pretty dope productions. Could you tell me a little bit about what that collaborative process involved?
Again, with a lifestyle like that, you're living in each other's pockets. It's very much a brotherhood. It's 6 cunts in one house all on the couch. It's very in each other's pockets for various reasons. Everything from FOMO to just being there all the time, that you're always I've smoked so much weed with Barry Bonza, but we never seek each other out. He's just there I'm there when the joint gets blazed. He's there when the joint gets blazed. Same with the wall. It's a new experience for me now, having a wall happen, and I'd have to reach out to my friends to let them know. Whereas before, even the biggest walls, straight away from the start, were arguing over who's going to have us like seagulls, like a flock of seagulls. Dirty Mac. You can't eat a chip. 10 other seagulls will be straight on that chip. And it's funny, you mentioned, sometimes our work would give a cohesive appearance, but behind the scenes we'll be throwing rocks at each other, fighting over. I've got footage of 2 of the boys painting the same spot on a production at the same time, going over each other, and just generally being like seagulls, working together to go against to fuck each other over.
Coming back to this period of time in the early 2000s, how would you describe the Auckland graffiti scene?
I would say the late 90s was like a golden sort of era. Auckland was a lot poorer in the 90s. There was a lot less money. There was a lot more raggedy, and there was just a lot more tagging and graffiti. And certain, I see my whole crew's style being influenced off one Gideon tag on the Kiwi Bacon Factory, and I see that, the impact that's had from those, sort of, I don't know, like the maturing of the 90s graffiti when it came and we started getting all the styles, and the hip hop golden era had sort of matured in Auckland right before hip hop became mainstream, and these things got rushed by everyone. the late 90s when we started was kind of quality over quantity. Everyone was a practitioner. There was no bench warmers. In the early 2000s when it changed, when it started to, like every guy who wore a polo wasn't necessarily a racker. Every guy who was in DMN wasn't necessarily good at graffiti. Like the culture got swamped and it kind of blew up. And I feel like that was great because it was a lot going on. But the very end of the 90s is what I think was the most influential sort of. That's when I look back and think, what was graffiti scene like? My mind straight goes to Acme straights, Gideon and Ransom tags, spots like the Kiwi Bacon Factory, certain places that had an influence, very specific sort of things.
Who would you say were 5 taggers at that time that were quite influential?
Gideon, Kai's himself, like Kai's was because he showed us how. Like our Frenzy was a influential tagger on me because he was the first guy I saw with my own eyes doing good style tags. Then Gideon had the join ups. He was one of that had that hand signature style, and Kai's was the leading influence in terms of practitioner within our group. And then localized people were famous, like in the area I was in, being sort of Kingsland, Morningside area. Strike was an influence. Perish, that same sort of the signature hand style was an influence. And you can see, like for me, like a whole lot of our pieces, like I literally trace 100 of our pieces back to one Gideon tag. Because I can look at this and then see the tag Kai's did that was influenced, then the tag I did that was influenced, that influenced my wild style, that influenced, like, it just, such, the biggest tree grows from the tiniest seed.
There's always a lineage, right?
Right, and the lineage gets narrower, it gets back to such specifics. You can have, later on your scope for influence can be like, Addict was a huge influence later on in terms of the whole overall thing. But at the start, it's literally as specific as I need a G.
It would be awesome to create a family tree of influences.
Yeah, and see if you find holes. If you want to be a style master, then you need every step to be there. It's funny, like with graffiti, how you perceive what you're looking at is such an intrinsic feeling. Someone can have everything right, but it's wrong. And someone can have everything that's not quite right, but it just feels right. And I think the difference between a real style or an organic style is whether or not you have every step back to the start. That's why being influenced through a medium like the internet is so hard
to kind of trace.
It's so hard to do it. Yeah, you because you're not. Yeah, you're just so like culturally detached from what you're. Yeah, if you want that influence, you actually have to seek it through those paths. It just doesn't quite like.
I completely agree with what you're saying about that. So kind of coming back to this idea of a graffiti lifestyle, you mentioned that you would go racking. So it was obviously a pretty common thing for writers to go rack their paint back in the day. Do you have any stories or experiences that you could share about that?
Far out. I've got a lot of crazy racking stories. Not
doesn't have to be specific.
Yeah, not always specific to paint. I mean, oh man, some of the funny. It's not funny, but I'd like. Our trick was running away. We're fast on the feet, and I'd often leave my missus high and dry sometimes. And I remember one time at Pakuranga Mall when I'd stolen something and got caught, and I'd had a wrestle or tussle with this guy in the shop and fucked his shop all up, and I'd managed to get out of his grasp and just run away. And I ran out the car park, straight past my missus' car, just kept running. It's funny, but it's terrible now.
How do you think that whole racking thing became part of the culture in the first place?
Well, first of all, because I was a thief.
Yeah.
I had the negative trait of being a thief. I stole shit, and I'd steal off people in my life when I was young. And then I found a way. Why polo appealed so much is because you could add your own values and perception to this that suddenly justified and gave you a direction for that. I wasn't a thief. I was a racker. Like the idea that like what polo represented. When I first found polo culture, it was just
for the people that don't know, there's a whole culture behind racking polos, right?
Well, there's a crew called the Lowlifes, who are a group of gnarly ass motherfuckers from out of New York, who made polo what it is. Who they stole all sorts of shit, but Polo Ralph Lauren was the clothing brand that they would go and ransack from department stores that represented the American lifestyle, and they put it on. They made it hot in the streets. They made it the leading, most influential fashion brand of all time. They made it say so much about you when you wore it. It was hard. It was elite. It wasn't, it wasn't like stealing a candy bar or stealing a spray can. It's a refined thief's game, and it was just a feeling of it, and just like for me, I put on so much more value in racking than I did graphing. Racking was by far my favorite of the elements that I like. Racking, I for years always wanted to paint with webs, and eventually I did. I became friends with Ollie and Webb. But before they'd paint with me, he'd come buy cans off me. So in the racking world, there was a change in balance, But it just, for me, that, of course, the ego's just you put more value on things where you sit higher in the pecking order. And for me, I was all right at tagging, but I was fucking elite at racking. I was that motherfucking guy, and that's how I valued people. Like, writers, to me, the thing that impressed me most was how full your boot was, what you had, how many antique pinks you had. I couldn't give a fuck. Like, to me, what the piece was like was just completely irrelevant. I remember when Callis first started, he was terrible. The first time I ever met him was when we were painting the Ellerslie Panmure wall. They used to have the Otis on it, Otis' stuff on it way back, and he rocked up in a boot full of rack paint, and like we were like thick thieves from that moment on. The way that an elite writer in an aesthetic way does with another top, the king recognized. It was just, to me, if you weren't about it, not, like, even if you were a thief, because a lot of my boys were like, they were fair weather thieves. They were flat track bullies. They'll steal when it's easy, but to me, they weren't getting that new shit out of the Polo store. They weren't getting those walking out with Nebuchadnezzars of fucking Dom P. They weren't doing the elite level. So like a band of thieves, but it was different who what you recognised as a racker. Yeah, that was massive to me, massive.
So racking was part of the culture, but coming back to this kind of idea of spray paint, what type of paint were you using at that time?
I would use plastic coats, spray coats, Duluxes, and painter's touch. And we'd use select colours that were because there was inconsistencies in all the brands, and certain colours were coveted on, if it was pink, it was antique pink out of or school bus yellow we'd use if you need certain colours as well. Yellow's a good example. It was really hard to get a good yellow, so you'd get dye marks. Yeah, dye marks don't work with other paint. It's the only big problem. The big problem, they just don't work with other paint. It's a big problem. And also, dye marks, you find when you steal dye marks, the price went up. And I found when I stole dye marks that eventually they wouldn't sell me anymore. And I found it was not conducive to and the reality, that was the only thing about dye marks, is that you had to be fair and square with them, and it reflected on other writers who had that connection with the guy there, and it was just a bad look. But and then spray coats, I'd use the orange, the red. We'd even use the tanning cans for shoes.
Oh yeah.
Because you could just rack them so easily off the front of Mr. Minute or whatever. It's always Dulux for black, Dulux for white. We'd use super cheaps for chrome. Yeah, pretty much just for chrome or black.
And during that time when you were tagging, what was the catalyst for you to shift towards painting pieces?
I'd drawn lots of little pieces, and in 2001 I went and tried one down in Combat Zone, and just immediately, it made Kai's Barry Bonds and mice just, boom, just straight in, and at the back of Gull, one of Kai's earliest outlines got a stick to tagging put on it. He was pretty sure it was Roberta at the time. I remember being, I'm pretty sure that's Roberta that's done that. Yeah, because he was amazing with the hand style, but it hadn't made that step yet. Yeah, I remember being off that he had just an outline back ago. I just wouldn't stick to tagging. I just remember at the time thinking, I'm pretty sure Roberta might have done that.
Who would you say were maybe 5 people that were influential to the kind of piecing space when you first started?
Icon,
yeah.
Icon, yeah, and like just when I like started to like, maybe I'd got like 50 pieces under my belt and started to like I'm thinking about getting it, thinking about starting to get it. Not in my own bubble head, like not my own head. He'd just come back from America. Like it was like kind of like as the Orientals peaked, and he came back from America. I remember they did that flags production inside Oriental, and it was just Icon. Like he was that guy, like that guy Icon for pieces. And then another 4, Nakota. He did like he did the polo wall. He did Gideon and then Levi were more those dudes with the can, especially Levi. But Nakota was so influential on me in other ways that my eye was on this dude, and when he did like the polo shield piece, it was just had meant to me. Jews was like just before you understood what wild style was just like you just knew that's what you wanted yours to look like it's a wild style. Merc, same, just had that. Tank just because it looked like what you thought graffiti should look like when you didn't have the internet and didn't have books, and like all you had was an idea of what you thought graffiti was. These guys had a style, and
I mean, that's an incredible list, and one day I'd love to interview all of those people sometime in the near future.
And I mean, those guys, every second person would probably cite Jews as an influence, I guess, especially from that era. He's just that dude with the wild styles.
Totally, bro. And just coming back to DMN, what would you say is the most memorable things that you've done with the crew?
A lot of my best memories are ones I solidified by capturing a moment in a picture. Like so a lot of people, like my boys and people can remind me of outrageous shit that's happened. I'm like totally forgotten about it, because when you're living that life, it was every day was outrageous shit. Our lives are just so unrealistic. But I remember when we painted down at Tank Farm, did this big wall. I've got this photo of Barry Bonzer on the top of a like double-sized ladder. He's painting Ren and Stimpy, but in the scene from Fear and Loathing Las Vegas. And he's standing at the very top of a ladder, and he's smoking a cigarette with like 4. He just looks like he's got about them. And Kaiser's on spotting him, but Kaiser's like attention is drawn away. It just looks like a shit show, and it's always struck me, that photo.
What were some of the graffiti spots that you recall painting? I mean, there's obviously Orientals.
Orientals, yeah.
And Oriental has that like, were you there when ... You know, it's a badge that every rider can wear if you were there when Orientals was popping. Earlier than that, I mentioned the Kiwi Bacon Factory. Like that wall alone had so much influence on that stretch along New North Road up to top of Simon Street, where the old was, I think it was Michael Jordan was a long time ago. That's where that famous Jews piece was. That sort of spots, and then down further into Eden Terrace, where near kind of where the prison is, just off Normanby, there used to be, it's now developed into like an apartment block or something, but there was a block that was, I can't remember what the spot was called, had a name, but it was, the whole perimeter of it was painted. And then just the tunnel, Boston Tunnel, where Askew showed guys the paper trick and changed all our, immediately all our graffiti suddenly got better immediately.
At some point, you guys clicked up with TNC. How did that happen?
We linked up with Daps the way you do, just reaching out to a right layer. We've done graffiti a couple of times, and then I met Callis, and TNC had just started out kind of, and Callis came to a wall we were painting with Daps on Ellerslie Pamio Highway, and he had a boot full of spray paint, and I said, do you like stealing? And he said, I'm partial, and off we went, and we were great mates after that. The first time, and TNC just weren't that same sort of attitude. They were like the first time I ever painted, shortly after that, the first time I painted a freight with Callis, which was Penrose, and we started our freight, and rocks start hitting us. So getting hit with rocks, and I'm like, what the fuck? And he's like, oh, that's just Kraft, one of the dudes from his crew. He's in the bushes. He's pissed off we didn't take him painting. Yeah, just that. Like, we got like a term which is a piece. Like, where they were pieces. Like, just like us, pieces of shit. Like, we're just a piece. Living the life. Like, we're living a lifestyle. Then the styles worked. It clicked, our styles, and also that's like linking up like that gave our crew a new. It was the end of the fake DMN. Like, it was the real DMN, then the DMN that me, Barry, and Drastic kind of bum rushed, that was sort of tacitly accepted, but like, people, you're not the real DMN. Rah, rah. Then after that, we were DMN TNC. We were like a super group.
That was a great duo.
It was we were a bit greater than the sum of our parts. I mean, who wouldn't want guys like Daps and Callis in their graffiti crew? And then who wouldn't want guys like me and Barry in their graffiti? It was mutually beneficial to everyone.
And how did that relationship between these crews evolve or change over time?
TNC broke up eventually to the main extent. It wasn't the same as what it was. The members went their different ways. And I guess so did DMN. It was more of I guess you just grow up. And the lifestyle we talked about, there's really only two ways it goes. You either grow up or you don't. You throw your life down the toilet. And I think my group of friends, one thing about us, we're all quite privileged, we're all quite entitled, and we're all reasonably smart and well educated. And I think we still kept a grip. We were having fun the whole time. We weren't marginalized or impoverished, or we were able to be like, wow, after 10 years that was fun, I'm gonna get a job, or I'm gonna do this, or I'm gonna travel. Like we still had opportunities that we took before it was too late, before they evaporated, and we became what we'd been acting like what we were.
And during this time, did you have much opportunity to travel and paint graffiti?
No, I never thought about traveling till traveling came to me. I didn't be first, and then sort of horizons got expanded. But when you do live a submersive lifestyle like that, there's too much. Your horizons are so small. There's too much to do here, kind of thing. We'd do road trips.
Yep.
We'd do road trips, and like to be like, hey, why don't we like go on holiday to? Like, it was like, what the fuck is wrong with you, bro? Like, it just wasn't in the way of thinking at that point. Like, yeah, we didn't have that same like writer. Ours was so insular. We only knew you if you came across like us. Like, we'd never choose to extend respect or choose to find our, like, it was just us, and you happened to be a sideshow in that.
You mentioned that your crew was quite insular and you had I guess very specific attitudes and viewpoints. Could you expand on what some of those attitudes were? I
mean, first of all, we were like a flock of seagulls, and there just wasn't enough to go. It was, we're too busy fighting over 10 seagulls over one chip, rather than there's, like, I could never get a wall and then think, oh, this is a 2-man wall. Hey, I might reach out to that dude Burst and we'll do that. It was I got 10 motherfuckers expecting, like, or being like, bro, I'm gonna cap that if you don't put me on your bitch ass. Like, it was very much cult, that sort of cult like living, and just that. It ain't about you doing your motherfucking thing, it's about me doing my motherfucking thing. Like, we're all good, partner, but like, it's about us doing our motherfucking thing. And it was that we felt a false sense of superiority, because what defined superiority was how much something related to us. If it wasn't about us, it was whack. Yeah, so it created a really tight brotherhood that became alienated from especially larger society, but even like our fellow peer, like
within the same.
for how well established our crew is, we've sat quite a way. Like, the other more established crews have formed stronger relationships and got to know each other more than our crew, which is sort of we was always frowned down upon. Like, if I was, I'm gonna link with such and such, like, you fucking bitch ass, like this like attitude, like, was like, oh yeah, sweet, what are you gonna, he doesn't rack his paint, so he's bitch. Like,
Do you think that those attitudes that you just spoke about were also shared amongst other crews as well?
Ones below us, yes, but the ones who were more self-assured in who they were and where they were, had reached the stage we're at now where they didn't feel that same level of threat. We didn't need to find and create our own narratives around our own sort of moral or ethical, like, we didn't need to find a point where we could be like, yeah, but TMD don't steal paint, so they're bitch ass toys. Like, we didn't need, like, TMD didn't need to act like that. Like, that's what you do when you're weak. That's what you do when you don't feel, when you seek to devalue, when you seek to find a point, something different, and yeah.
Alongside the graffiti lifestyle, I know that you've been involved with music. Could you tell me a little bit about that background and how you got involved in rapping?
Yep, rapping was really popular for a start at that time. Every person was a rapper, so every person was a tagger.
And were you making music before painting?
No, I painted well before. And around 2001, like every little wannabe, I realized that rapping had a real low entry point, and as long as my words rhymed, I could talk. It's about dominance, about dominating attention. It's about look at me, that's why every guy became a rapper, and everyone wanted to jump in the cipher. Like, everyone wants to have the mic, and for us, it was just very much about compensation. I was just like, what? So you talk, and people have to listen to you talking. Okay, I can do that. Let's do that. And it worked, and then all of my boys did it. We all freestyled, and then I won a few battles, and winning a few battles or doing okay in that sense sort of create it links you. You're in there. You're that. My Mike Pipe's name. I used to put down silly names at any time I entered a battle. I put stupid names, and that was the one I put that today. Michael Pipes. Word perfect around the battle. I was like, oh, can we get Michael Pipes? And then I won that battle, and then that's how that. But however long before, when I was last in the battle, I put something methamphetamine Todd or something stupid. It was just ridiculous, and then people hold you to it.
What was it like to be a part of that battle rap scene? Because I know you were involved in organising a lot of other events like One Ounce.
One Ounce was, by then it was a bit different. I'd changed a lot by then. I think when I first started getting into rap and I won a few battles, it was not really good for me and my personal development. I think it, instead of having to face, got me a false sense of, it justified a false sense of superiority. And I'm this, it gassed me. It gassed me, and you don't have to listen to my music more than once to know I'm fucking pretty shit. I have the intelligence to put together some bars. That's why I can do a battle. But at the end of the day, talent in music, it's measured by the quality of your voice, and I don't sound particularly great on a recording. I'm not saying I sound like nails on a chalkboard, but I'm not. It's not like you. You don't hear my voice and be like, that guy has that. It's not Snoop Dogg. I was pretty shit. What I thought was good content and stuff. I listen to my music now and I cringe. I hate it. I don't remember any of it.
Why do you hate it?
Because it's crap. It's just garbage. It sounds garbage. I'm talking garbage. And I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling myself. It's just hot trash. And it's funny because some of my friends, it meant something to them and they remember some of it or whatever, and I'm like, I can't remember any of I can only remember Catch You Up, that one song we did that was we eventually got to the point where we did one passable song. We finally did a passable song, and I can kind of remember that one. Barry had a bit of voice on a record, he sounded okay.
Were there many other people from your crew doing music, or was it just you and Barry?
No, it was me and Barry were ostensibly the rappers in our group. The boys are jumping on the freestyle ciphers and stuff like that. But those that we were the only two who were I am a rapper. I am, I'm this, I'm that, cluck.
And during this time, who would you say was some influential MCs?
Cyphernetic, Tourette's, Unique. Unique's my favourite New Zealand rapper. His voice sounds dope. I think that's all. He just sounds so dope. Louis Nux. Breaking Records to me was the most influential, fast crew, because like TMD, I loved them so much I hated them. You know, like I wasn't ready to love them. Like, yeah. I was just like, that's what I want. That's what, like, they're where I like. Just like, I hate, and you know what I mean. Love so much that you can't ever. I could never like. I can never process that or understand that, so it's come out as hate. But now I'm like, fuck, I used to love Fast Crew.
While doing all of this music, I know you moved to Melbourne. What year was that again?
That was I went in 2009. Then I came back for 2010 and finished my degree, and then 2011 I went like right through.
Yeah. What was the reason for moving there, and what was life like moving across the ditch?
It was the same as most people who move to Australia, run away from a problem, a fresh start, and you know, just an easy way to get a fresh start without like facing up to your problems. The lifestyle we lived as well, we'd found ways to support that and to make that happen, and I felt like I would never step away from that. Like, I needed to be in a situation where I needed to, like, if I wanted to eat, I needed to get off my bum and go and do some fucking work. I hadn't done a day's work in my life. I'd reached that point where, like, it was like I say, we weren't actually are we throwing our lives away? Is that like, we're getting late 20s now? Are we marginalizing ourselves out of that future opportunities, or is it time to like be like, yeah, nah, I still want to be employable, yeah? And so I just made that decision. Okay, I'll go to Australia, and I'm really lucky because I had a really close one of my best friends was over there, and he helped me get into working and taught me a lot of like the basic skills I was lacking, just about being not just a man, but just a human being. Like, everyone has to do something they don't want to from time to time. You're not going to find happiness by being a hedonist, by running away, by always just being like, yeah, but right now I could put the pots and pans down and go out, do what I want. It doesn't work like that. You've got to, and he just taught me how to humble a little bit, how to look at a bigger, yeah, you know, you're doing this now, but like, you can see dividends that are going to be paid later on, whereas before I would be like, no, you'd never catch me. Some of those attitudes that I have, like, I hate wearing high-vis, because I'm not, I used to be lol, wearing a high-vis, oh lol, no, I'm not that poor. Like, I'll just go fucking steal whatever I need to wear a high-vis for the day. Well, I'd rather, like, my attitude was like, I couldn't, to me, like, people who grafted were chumps, like morons. People who grafted, I didn't realize that I was just really, really, really privileged, like, that I get to live this fantasy life, whereas most people it's not like that. Like, you have to compromise somewhere along the way, and so going to Aussie was just about a fresh start in Oz.
When you moved to Australia, were you still organising the One Out events?
That's when I started One Outs. I just always kind of kept battling a little bit, and the guys here had started doing One Outs, and I'd done a few battles to support and stuff. And then when I went to Australia, I got into the raps battles, and there was opportunity, like good opportunity there, and I saw opportunity, and I was like, I reached out to the guys here at the time. I was like, I'll use that same name if you're cool with that. I'll do my thing. And I saw an opportunity.
Do you think New Zealand rappers hold their own, I guess, against Australians?
I mean, it's contentious to say, but I'm going to say no, not even remotely even close. I mean, proof's in the pudding. The Australians, anytime we've come head to head, the Australians have chewed us up. Justice is their top ever, their highest ever achiever, one Scribble Jam. Our highest achiever lost in a final to the guy who won Scribble Jam. We didn't have the side. Even just like the nature of us as people, like Australians are ruthless and mean, and they're cunts, and it fits battling and laughing at people and being horrible fits in with who they are, and here we don't. In battle rapping is you're your own biggest fan, you're your number one fan. It's about you, and here we don't really go with that. We play it more, downplay it, like being like I'm the fucking man's is not how you handle yourself, and I just think New Zealand's got too much self-respect to be as good at battle rapping as Australia is.
In 2015, I know you moved back to Aotearoa, so what have you been up to and what's life been like since you've moved back?
I can't lie, it's been pretty good. Well, I've had family, got home, haven't been wanting for anything. Life's been really good. It's been really good. I've traveled a lot, just become an adult, just achieved that sort of thing. Got my kids, and
I know that you've had 2 kids, and you mentioned that being a father has kind of helped to ground you in some respects. So now that you're raising your own family, what would you tell your 20-year-old self in hindsight?
I would tell myself to have paid more respect to my own life experience and been less dismissive of people, places, experiences, times. I'm terrible. I don't remember. I've experienced my own life. I marginalized my own life experience. I don't remember things. I didn't bother. I walked around with my head. I pull my head out of my ass, basically. Understand that I've got to live a special and unique life because I'm blessed, not because I'm the fucking man. It's when I now paint something amazing and people are like, thank you so much. I'm like, well, to get to this has been a privilege. I'm not a savant. My talent is an ordinary human's talent. It's the capacity to learn, and I've been lucky enough to be able to apply that. I've been able to spend 20 years getting good at this, and now I can be this, and it's realizing that you're not special because you're special because I did anything. You're lucky.
I mean, it's been awesome to see you painting again and obviously contributing to the scene. But since you left Australia, there was a big chunk of time that you were gone. So what are your current views of the graffiti scene here in Aotearoa?
When I first came back, the first few years, Auckland was still just dead. Auckland was still, it was underground. You had to go to weird canals to look at painting. You had to go to weird little nooks and crevices. Nobody was up. You went to Christchurch and Wellington to do your Christchurch was the undisputed epicenter of graffiti in New Zealand, and then we had a change of council, a change of government, a change of agendas, and now it's watching it. It's like watching a garden grow that you didn't really, after a drought, and you can see how it's snowballing. Everyone's feeding off it. New guy, older dudes are getting sucked back into it like far out. And younger guys are coming out, and with what's going on at a societal level, so many young dudes want something. They want something, and this popping off is just you can see if it's allowed to, it'll get as big as it's ever been, because the new guys are hungry. They're hungry to get in there.
There is definitely a huge quantity of graffiti in the scene at the moment, which is really awesome to see. Do you think that the quality is consistent with what you saw previously?
Yes and no. Not at its peak. At things come in waves, and eras mature, and I think that you come to sort of 05 to 2010 was sort of the Netch era was a golden era of everything from before that coming to a point. But I think in comparison, if you think of this as 2 or 3 years into a new era, it'd be comparative to 01, 02 in my mind, then yes. Then I think I see just as much potential and talent in people as it's very hard to do anything new. In earlier eras, you could be experimental and blow people's minds by virtue of being experimental, whereas this mass saturation and globalization of culture in general means that something that hasn't been done, that the idea of something that hasn't been done has been done. Everything that, everything is so oversaturated that's what goes back to what we said before, that it really is about being able to trace organic steps. It's just about not looking at just being you and discovering you through it, and you're just being happy to be like you and express who you are. I think that it is, and because of that we're getting the style. The guys have got the starting points. Guys like the graffiti's kind of ready to go. It's bold, it's bright, it's got a focus on the fundamentals and on foundations, and on getting up and on like having an impact, and just it's back to like I like shit that fucks people's day up. Like that's that. Then you wild style later, but first of all you need to know how to like write your name somewhere that makes people go, oh my god, as they go by on the motorway.
Do you think that the current generation of riders are moving in the right direction?
Yep, absolutely.
Coming back to this generation, who would you say are maybe 3 riders that have caught your attention at the moment?
A few core dudes are going to have such a big impact. Like Pork, for example, is so massively important. Like the impact. I mean, at the moment, the motorway corridor is the number one place instead of the railway corridors from our era, which makes sense because it's the most visible. That's what graffiti is all about. So, like, to see that as the Hall of Fame at the moment that's what it should be about. You know, to me, that fits in with our ethos that you can never be the biggest and baddest down at Avondale Art Park, and if you haven't put your name on the main Hall of Fame corridor, you need to start there. And so I think like seeing that makes me think, yep, there's a lot of visibility. I know people still do the trains, but I've never understood the idea of we for us it wasn't about graffiti like that. It was part of a bigger picture, so we never had this sort of like idea of what graffiti writing is that needed to be applied. TNC were the guys who like showed us that you need to paint trains. Part of being a writer is you paint trains. That's a big part of the culture. For us, I was always like, I don't see trains. Later, it made sense more when the culture became more globalized, because your work here has a ripple effect on like. No one's going to paint trains with you in Europe if you haven't painted a panel in your home country, right? Like, so you have to become part of a bigger goal as a writer. You know, if you're planning to make the pilgrimages, like in my era, there was no such thing as a pilgrimage. There wasn't that. It was very local. It was about a dog. Dog don't get on a plane to go piss on a pole. You piss on the pole that's there. You don't. To us, getting in the car and driving out to Westfield at 2 a.m. never happened because we never plan. It was just, the moment thing, and I took a long time to get my head around trains, and I'm always just been like meh with trains, but I get it a lot more than I did. Sure. And there's always going to be someone who keeps it alive. Someone's got to do it. Whacked. Okay, whacked because you're seeing the name. The name's everywhere. He's all city. He's the wise K. He's that guy. Jumbo. Jumbo. Just because he's cut from the same kind of cloth that we come from. He has a lot of the same sort of values and ideas. Surge is really like style-wise pretty good. Same with I don't know if you call him new because I missed out a lot on MTS. The like emergence of MTS as a bona fide recognised top crew, and so I don't Waste. When I came back, I was like, this guy Waste is pretty fire. He's fire, like, and I to me was not. I knew not new. I don't know, but like to me it was new. Rams probably the pick of the bunch. Probably Rams is probably the best new writer to me, and I don't know if you'd even call him new of the last 5 years. I just basically, for me, new is people who weren't around before I went to Oz, and they come back. They're like, Rams is he's not new. He's a fully developed writer. But
man, I completely agree with you there. I mean, he's incredibly talented. But just turning our attention back to what you've painted actually for this pavilion, could you let the audience know a little bit about what the concept was? Well,
first of all, when you offered me the opportunity to paint it simultaneous to when I'd painted on the fruit and veg wall that's adjacent to the park, and had ended up in discussions with the guys who run that, and felt an opportunity was coming up for me to grab that wall, and so I wanted to link the two, and I wanted to I've been wanting to do something for the passed away rapper Louis Nux, who's someone I knew personally, but also someone who is really significant to a lot of people who are close to me. I think there'll be quite a few people who would have immortalised him in mural, and I didn't jump on that, but I felt over time, okay, I'll do that. And then I thought, okay, well, with the pavilion, one thing I wanted to do is, I knew I couldn't do something based around aesthetic because it's already been done. Like, you've already had so many. I could only ever do, even if I did the most perfect, amazing thing aesthetically, it's only arbitrary that it's only as good as anything else you've done. I want to try to. The goal is to try and do something that has meaning and significance to people, so it stands out. I want people to be like, oh, do you remember? That's the one I remember, because that's the one that connects. Yeah, like, I just feel like a lot of painting is there's no reason for it. Like, why did you do this painting? Why? There's no. It's self-gratification, which is fine, or recreation, which is fine, but I want to figure out what other people want me to do with my painting and do that for them. And this is just like an attempt to try and do that, to try and make the experience different and what it gives to people different. Yeah, people are starting to forget who's done what on the month's roll. Everyone's seen a million amazing pieces. I know I have some understanding of skill, and now I have some understanding of my forms and foundations, but I'm never going to win at pure aesthetic. If you just come down, I'm never going to be does love letters. You know, that level of the aesthetic alone and technique alone is memorable and connects with you. It has to have something. Yeah, it has to have a meaning, and that meaning has to be other people determine that meaning. I hope people respond positively to it. And
yeah, I completely agree, man. And I guess your approach to this pavilion has been distinctly different than the other ones. It's not just aesthetics. So it's really great to see how people might engage with the work and see how the work might evolve, I guess, over the next couple of weeks. All right, bro, that's a wrap. So in closing, do you have any shout outs you'd like to make?
Yeah, no, well, shouts to you, brother. I appreciate what you're doing for me and for our community, and it's an inspiring, and it's really good to have someone I see in front of me who gives me faith, showing that if you do just give, if you do just have this, your attitude right, that you can benefit from other people's benefit. And so yeah, thank you very much, bro. I appreciate it.
Awesome, bro. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspective with the audience. I really appreciate your honesty and authenticity to your story, and it's really just great to hear about your evolution, not just as a writer, but also how you've kind of stepped into fatherhood. I'm really excited to see what you do next, and I guess to have this kind of reinvigorated focus and energy on quality and what you might do, and how you're going to bring all of these life experiences to this new chapter of work. That's really exciting to see. So I guess in closing, if you've liked the content, make sure you subscribe and leave a comment below. We definitely have more content coming, and next month's artist will be sitting down with Glenn Innes, a native, Race from A2D, who is another writer that's definitely been on my radar for dropping some incredible work particularly over the past 2 years. So really excited to sit down with him and share his story as well.